Shahroo, exercise and weight loss. I'm dying to hear your
Ooh.
thoughts.
I used to only exercise if I was trying to lose weight. I
Mm.
actually never grew up associating exercise with anything other than weight loss. And I don't know about you, but when I was at school, um, the kids who got really into exercise were the kids who were kind of looked the right way. And so
Mm.
the school kind of invested in them getting better at sports. And it was all very outcomes based. But I don't remember until I was an adult associating exercise with improved mental health or just feeling good, just to feel good in the process, as opposed to having an outcome of some kind. And actually, in my case, where I got so lost in the dieting stuff, I only ever exercised if I was trying to lose weight.
Wow.
Yeah, which usually meant that I was at that time really deprived, and so I
Mhm.
associated it with thinking I was going to pass out, and um and I was always doing this really sort of punitive, punish myself, how did you get so big, how did you let this happen exercise. And so invariably I would end up like vomiting or whatever. I would never start by thinking, it's that sort of extreme mentality.
Mm.
I would never start by thinking, oh, maybe I could just walk to the top of the road. I'd
Yeah.
sign up for a boot camp or something. And so invariably I would I'd become really disillusioned. And the parallels between that and the way I was eating were extraordinary. Um, but certainly at school, I don't know about you, but did they encourage you at school to just like exercise and movement?
So I was an anomaly. So when I was at school, this is really like I'm like the opposite of your story, which is really I think is yin and yang. I loved sports. I loved exercising. Just would do any sport. I've gotten a natural advantage of being exceptionally tall, so people automatically think that you're good at sports if you're tall. But the interesting thing was the longer I moved, so I went to an all girls secondary school, as is the way in Ireland. Makes you sound so strict. But and as I moved through the years in school, less and less people girls exercised. And less girls did sport, and even to the point where there was 125 of us in our year, and in our final year, I think 5 of us played a sport. And the rest wanted the fitness, classes, and they wanted the treadmill and those things. And again, it was that association with, exercise is a modality to make you look a certain way, to make you be a certain way. And it was all about, that kind of type of exercise to get, as you say, to get to a certain point rather than actually enjoying it for what it is, for sport or for the enjoyment that it brings. Um, and it's interesting for me when I left school and then I went into academia and everything, then my framework on exercise kind of changed a little bit, and it was less about the fun, and it was more I was in quite a sports orientated college as well, so it was all our university. And it was all about like what time you could get in a race, or what your 10K time was, or what your triathlon time was, and that sucked the life out of it for me. And actually it reminds me, I'm going to tell my whole life story here, but when I was swimming, I used to be part of a swim team, and I missed this like trials by like a quarter of a second or something like that. And I remember like the coach fixating on, oh, well, you didn't make it or whatever. And I just thought, well, this is bullshit, because I swim because I love it. I don't swim to like get a quarter of a second time or whatever. And they were like, oh, you just don't have the killer instinct. And I quit swimming. I didn't swim. And swimming brought me so much joy. And I didn't swim probably for years after that, because they made it an outcome, they made it a process, they made, or not a process, but they made it like a numbers based thing, and a way to kind of evaluate your worth. When I hear you talk there, Shahroo, as well, I feel like, and you can tell me if this is wrong, but it was a punishment for you. It was a way to almost punish yourself.
Well, yeah, because I didn't associate it with anything good, or no, I didn't associate it with anything enjoyable. And
Mm.
it was always going to be like a catalyst for weight loss in my case. But I think also on your point, sports seem to be somewhere where this sort of tough love mentality that you and I have moved so far away from in the work that we do, and compassion based work, and knowing full well that now more and more research is pointing towards compassion focused motivational tools, there was always this sort of like tough love, army style,
no pain, no gain.
yeah. And I guess if you're a sports person, there's a value in that. I don't know, if I'm honest. But certainly as a person who's just hoping to find ways to be healthier in general, yeah, it'll put you off if someone's telling you you're crap at something all the time. Of course it will, especially when you're a kid. Like now, I remember a couple of years ago, maybe more than a couple of years ago, I went to a Pilates class and I was really rubbish at it, really rubbish. And by this point, I was already doing all this work, and and the instructor kept making fun of me in front of the whole class. And I think there was a version of me that like wanted to say what I wish I'd said when I was about 15.
Yeah.
And I just got up and left. And I could tell that she was even kind of laughing at me about that. And then I wrote an email just saying, it's a bit pompous of me, but I was basically like, I don't know what you guys know about motivation, but presumably you're trying to sell places in this class, and you taking the piss out of people is just not going to help. She was mocking me, and I think that she thought that it was going to be like, oh, she'll do better to stop me making fun of her. And I've seen that play out over and over and over again, mainly in school. I'm kind of hoping that it's different now in schools. But certainly this idea that it's like funny if you're not getting something right, or that if someone keeps, doubling down on what they're saying to you in a louder voice, that you're going to do it. It's just, for me, it's just a complete turn off. I'm just out. And then it tends to have a knock-on effect on the other habits which I have. In the past, if I went to an exercise class and I was associating it with losing weight and it was horrible because I felt sick, or it was a boot camp and someone was horrible to me, well, what did I tend to do when I felt horrible? Comfort eat. So it just didn't work for me.
There's a big piece there about shame, isn't there? Because actually it sparked something in my mind there, because I remember a lot of the girls at school would be like, oh, I'm not good at sports. I'm not good at exercise. I'm not good at it. And so then therefore that's why they didn't engage, because they felt like it made them feel bad about themselves because they weren't good at it. And that's because always the joy of the engagement wasn't celebrated. And I know I've worked a lot in physical activity interventions now, and what we focus on now is like, how do we create a joy of movement? How do we actually, a lot of the interventions that work really well, especially in that category of teenage girls, which is really, really low engagement, are things like dance interventions, where we're making it fun and less kind of individual focused, so we can't like point out, or you get picked last for the team or any of those kind of negative experiences. But a lot of people hold those experiences that they've had from school and carry them through their lives and think, well, this is not for me, and they create an identity around that, and I think that can be quite dangerous.
Absolutely. Do you know, I went to a class last year, I won't say which one, but it's quite a popular thing, and just to try it out. And as soon as I got there were all these like intimidatingly fit people there. And they all knew each other and whatever, that you kind of expect. But then they said, okay, to warm up, get into teams and then compete against each other. There was like this medicine ball thing. You put the medicine on your belly and like walk, like crawl around like a crab or something. I mean, it was just, for me, horrendous. Anyway, first of all, I had to go find teammates. I'm a 35-year-old woman, so I was like, please can I be on your team? Please can I be on your team? By the way, I paid like 20 quid for this luxury. So I'm like, okay, please can I be on your team? And this woman, I swear to you, went, don't be shit. And I was like, what? How is this mean girl situation happening right now? We're all here to exercise. And then you realize there are some people who have, there are people like me who are like traumatized from all that stuff. And then there are some people who've held on really tight to that thing and it helped them enormously. And they love the competition and they love it. And they love the sort of, it spurs them on and they like it and it really helps them. So I think there's something to also be said for the fact that, I know it's a cliche and it's not the clear cut thing everybody wants to kind of hear, but it works for some people too. I can't help but think those might be the sorts of people who don't add so much, they don't moralize. I think last time in the video we did, you put it so beautifully about moralizing food choices. And I think people who see exercise as this isolated activity of getting their heart rate up and being competitive and moving around, and have just never attached all this emotional stuff to it. I get why competition can be healthy and whatever. Whereas when it comes to me, it's like I want to go over there and cry. Like there's too much attached to it. That I have too many memories of feeling awful or trying on some, forgetting my PE kit and then them being like, well, you're not going to be able to.
It's the not good enough, isn't it? You're not good enough. Like, it's the you won't be good enough at this. It's a huge shame thing, right?
It's also really weird because when you're a kid, presumably no kid was like,
had perfect motor control.
It just so happens that some of them were better at exercise than other ones, right? I don't know if it's genetic. I don't know if they were practicing at home, whether they were like crawling upstairs while I was just drinking milk and chilling as a baby. I have no idea. But you get to like 10 years old and it's like, well, so sorry, some of you are good at exercise and you're being applauded for it, and some of you are not. And from that point, you start picking up all these truths about yourself. And also the reality was, I mean, I went to a good school that was really good at exercise and had amazing resources. And I could tell you on Wednesday afternoons, we all had to do like register in the same place after lunch. And then we all went to different places. Like the kids that were good at rugby would go to rugby all afternoon, and the kids that were good at hockey and whatever else. And I was off grid. Like, I don't know if their school, I have no one from my school watches this because I'm not sure, but I was off grid. I'd go off campus, I'd just chill, we'd smoke cigarettes. Like, I was like totally not, no one cared. And I went to a really conscientious, lovely school. But when it came to exercise, there was a kind of feeling of, if you're not good at it, you can tap out. No one does that with maths. And yet it's not maths that's helping me with my anxiety right now. So it's a real shame.
And there's an interesting thing as well, I think, around exercise, in terms of the fact that, like, it's something that's been pushed a lot now for childhood obesity as a treatment for childhood obesity. And I think it's an interesting policy angle as well, because, like, I was reading a study last week about Amazonian children. They compared children that are in tribes in the Amazon to, children that are in towns nearby. And they looked at, their exercise and their food and, their activity levels. And actually they burned the same amount of calories, the children in the towns, as the children that were kind of out in the Amazon. But the ones in the Amazon were leaner, like less body fat, and it all came down to what they ate, which was quite interesting. And I think this is a lot of the research actually shows that we overestimate the impact that physical activity has on weight loss, and we overamp it as a treatment for weight loss rather than for healthy lifestyle change. And yeah, it was all down to the fact that those Amazonian children tended to eat less. They tended to eat less processed foods, and the children in the town had more processed foods, and they ate more. And the call of this study was really that we need to move away from talking about exercise as a weight loss tool, talking about physical activity as a weight loss tool, and actually appreciate it as a health gain tool instead.
I think that's I'm really glad that you shared that. I didn't know that. And in my experience, the way that weight loss, in the end, the way that exercise helped me manage my weight was that it became one of the many things I do to take care of myself. And it also helped to decrease my anxiety levels. And I had there was a relationship between how anxious I was and how much I felt the desire to comfort eat, or back in the day, binge eat, to sort of numb out from the anxiety. But one thing that it does, I think, is it's one of the signals amongst many signals, like sitting in a patch of sun or not having our phone on at the beginning of the day, that you're giving your body on a daily basis that it matters and that you're taking care of it. And so when it comes to your eating choices, which, as you say, are more responsible for weight management, they can sort of stick out like a sore thumb against the landscape of being nicer to yourself in every possible way and taking care of your body in every possible way, I find. And so, you know, it also means that you're kind of feeling, I felt that exercise made me more connected with my body. I think a lot of people who are seasoned dieters will be able to identify with this idea that they've moved so far away, not just from common sense that we discussed in the last video, but from actually identifying what hunger is, what physical hunger is, what emotional hunger is, what they're craving food wise. You know, a lot of people talk about intuitive eating. And as we said last time, for people like me, there's this huge unlearning process before you get to an intuitive place, because my body at one point intuitively wanted French fancies all day, as far as I was concerned. So, you know, to actually go, I feel like I want this. My body wants something sweet. My body wants something salty. My body wants something that's going to nourish me or ground me. Or this is, it helps to, I think exercise helps with that. It helps you to feel in your body a little bit more, and feeling the blood pumping and all that stuff.
Connection more. Absolutely.
Yeah, I found that it helped to get to an intuitive place. It was one of the components for me that helped me get more into how I was feeling.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because then it's like, I always think this is quite curious as well, and it's something that I've had to learn in the last year, recovering, well, like last 8 months recovering from my operation, is as well, there's a movement intuition like there is a food intuition as well. And you know, we think that we need to kind of pound the treadmill or do those high intensity interval classes, and I see a lot of people, you know, in the city in London, you know, it's always the high octane stuff that needs, you know, that people feel like they need to do. They need to get that endorphin release and that really hardcore workout, the boot camp. And actually, often, you know, that's the last thing people need when their cortisol is so high and they're coming into a really, really stressed job all day. They actually need that groundingness. They need that kind of slow movement. They need that reconnection with the breath, you know, to get back into their bodies. And yet they're smashing it at the gym. And I'm curious about a lot, is some of that to do with the fact that we have this belief that exercise, you know, exercise gives us this freedom. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but I mean, a lot of people feel like exercise can be the band-aid for, you know, discrepancies in diet, or, you know, like there's a phrase like, and it almost sounds cruel, but you can't exercise your way out of a bad diet. And what I mean by that is, you know, some people I feel that they can, exercise can make up for compensatory behaviors. And you notice it in our language. Oh, well, you've been to the gym, so you deserve this, or you've been moving all day, you deserve that. And it's not a tit for tat. It's not like that. You know, you don't do something in repentance for your sins or do something in anticipation for your sins. It's like, goes back to that moralization that, okay, I've been good today because I've exercised, it means I can be bad in my diet. And unfortunately, what the science says is that's not an effective way if weight loss is your goal, to approach things. And I worry that a lot of people, you know, who are punishing themselves in this way are doing it for this weight loss goal and not knowing how ineffective that is and the negative impact it has on their health in general, you know, spiking their stress levels and actually disengaging them from that sense of intuition that you've talked about is so important to cultivate.
Absolutely. And their self-esteem, Heather, like having to justify enjoying something that's calorific, you know, having to justify it because with movement or being some urgent or urgently need to go get rid of that. Like, it just, for me, it kind of reinforces this guilt and shame, which I worked so hard to disassociate from the joy that is food. And then, you know, it lends itself to quite obsessive behavior, I find. If you start doing the whole tracking, you know, oh, I had a biscuit, so that means I should do 10 minutes on a treadmill, and I had a, you know, working it out. I've always thought that, like, and also it makes you really disillusioned. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever like done that before, but in the past, when I've had like a, you know, I would have thought, oh, you know, my lunch on this Fitness Pal app or whatever, my lunch will have been 500 calories, and then I'll go on a treadmill and like an hour later I'm dying a million deaths, and it's like, you've burned 33 calories, and it just doesn't make me want to exercise. I'm not gonna lie,
it's so demoralizing for people because that's not how our metabolism works. And that's, you know, I think like we've got our basal metabolic rate, which is our normal metabolic rate, then we've got another kind of rate of our metabolism, which is based on the food we eat and the energy burn to consume that food. And then it's like adaptive thermogenesis. And then the third part is like physical activity and movement. And that only makes up between 10 and 30% of actually our calorie burn. And so it's unfair to actually, I see it in a lot of apps, they say you've burnt off a banana or, something stupid like that. And it again, it reinforces that all or nothing thinking and that mindset of, oh, okay, well, if I just do this, then I can do this to compensate for the behaviors, rather than actually creating that relationship where you don't feel like you have to earn everything or punish yourself for everything. Yeah, I'm curious what you think about that.
Even when you said burn off a banana.
Yeah.
What?
I know.
You don't tell a kid, go burn off that banana.
Yeah.
You say, have a banana. Oh, you want to run around? Go run around.
Yeah.
Is it this idea that, okay, as I'm eating, I'm thinking about how I'm going to get rid of it again. It's just, I don't know. It's
a dark side as well of exercise, because it's like people think, oh, well, like, if someone's had a big boozy night or pizza over there, like, oh, well, I'll just go to the gym and smash it out tomorrow, and that will somehow compensate for my behaviors. And I don't mean that in a punishing way for people, but it's just a really unhelpful way of actually thinking about what balance is. And I find it really interesting, the food companies on the food labeling of, foods that are highly processed and highly, not health promoting, they always have this little message down the part at the bottom saying to be consumed as part of an active lifestyle. But like you said, you can spend 3 hours on the treadmill trying to burn off the equivalent of a Mars bar. And so that's actually really not a useful public health message for someone, and not a useful mental health message for someone as well.
No, and I think that active lifestyle, Heather, I think is a really good point. At the beginning of lockdown, the first lockdown, I gained weight. And I thought, this is peculiar, because, I mean, obviously I've totally got okay with my weight fluctuating now. But I was like, this is peculiar because I'm still doing structured exercise. So I'm still sort of, I got a bike and whatever. And then I realized, why am I gaining weight? My diet is exactly the same. And I realized it's because I walk around London all day for joy. I'm not clocking that as exercise. If I've got to go from Soho to Mile End and I've got an hour, I'll walk it just because it's nice and I like London. That's it. So that's what it was. It was me becoming a generally active person because I liked generally what I was seeing and moving around, as opposed to saying, right, drive, the classic drive up as close as you can to the front of the gym. Basically hurl yourself into the gym and then get the lift up to the gym and
then sit on a static bike. So drive to the gym, sit on a static bike, and then drive home. And it's like,
which I love as well, don't get me wrong. I really like, I like structured exercise, but I happened to learn that wasn't what was helping me manage my weight this year. And I didn't realize that until this year. I honestly thought that the structured exercise was a little bit more responsible. But it turns out it wasn't at all. It was the general wanting to generally on a day-to-day basis, walk up that little hill because it's nice up there and there's coffee up there. And then doing that over and over again throughout your life.
The difference between movement and exercise. So like exercise is planned, structured repetition of physical movements, and physical activity is our day-to-day, and I think that's what we have in our heads. It's the exercise piece. It's the punishing repetitive movements that we feel we need to do in order to get to those weight loss goals. And now I've done 2 degrees in exercise. I'm the biggest promoter of exercise, but I just feel like when it comes to weight loss, it needs a rebrand. And actually, there's a quote that I read, and I really want to read it out, if you don't mind for a second, because I actually think it so beautifully sums this up. It's from Yanni Friedhoff, who I absolutely love. He's an obesity doctor. And he calls for this, like, we need to promote exercise on the basis of its life-changing benefits, not as a weight loss tool. It can prevent cancers, it can improve blood pressure, cholesterol, sugar, bolster sleep, attention, energy, mood, so much more. And it's proven to be itself, it's the world's best drug. It's better than any pharmacological product any physician could ever prescribe. And we found, even in our studies, we got some people that were actually like on suicidal. They scored in depression scores as being suicidal, and we got them into movement and into exercise, and their scores like significantly dropped, which is just incredible. But Yanni Friedman he goes on to say that exercise is not a weight loss drug. And so long as we continue to push exercise primarily and sometimes exclusively in the name of treating adult or childhood obesity, we continue to shortchange the public about genuinely the incredible health benefits of exercise. And we misinform them about the realities of long-term weight management. And I think that this is something that's really, really important to think about, because so there's two things that come to mind here, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, Shahroo. But one is, when we kind of set out on a weight loss journey, we end up kind of thinking, okay, we've got to do the exercise goals and the diet goals and all of the other things all at once. And it leads to this concept in psychology known as goal dilution, which is the more you add in, the more you take away. And so, arguably, if from a weight loss point of view, you might want to start with diet if it feels like the right place for you, if you feel mentally able to kind of approach that, or motivated to approach that, or it's something that intrigues you. But it's interesting, because then when we get to the maintenance phase, and we've kind of unlocked kind of those mental barriers to actually engaging in healthy practices, exercise and movement can be really, really positive, not just for the health benefits, but also for the compensatory positive behavior changes, because we feel like we've invested in our health when we go to the gym. We feel in more positive mood when we've gone for a walk in nature. It actually helps us manage all of those mental issues that actually stop us from engaging in a healthy lifestyle in general. And so exercise promotes all of those ways in which to actually increase our motivation and make us more likely to want to take more care of ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, I think it's that signaling, isn't it? It's the signaling to your body that I'm worthy of taking care of, and that throughout the day I'm finding opportunities to do things that are good for me.
Yeah.
Voluntarily.
Yeah. And I think so the whole thing is, like, there's nothing that frustrates me more than when someone's trying really hard and getting nowhere, and they think they're doing all of the right things. Like, the thing that comes to my mind, here, is the Special K diet back in the day. And
what was that? You eat cereal twice a day and then dinner, right?
For all your meals. And like, this is the one thing that actually made me so motivated back in the day to spread this message. But people think that they're doing all the right things because they've been told that those are things. And it's the same with movement. We think we're doing all the right things, but we're punishing ourselves and not finding the exercise we enjoy. We're doing the things that we think are going to get us the highest calorie burn. We're not thinking about our own personal movement intuition, how that walk helps us like feel in a better mood for the day, and therefore we make better choices. By feeling slightly tired from exercise, how it's actually quite a satisfying feeling, how actually it can help spark us to make other healthier choices in our lives, how it helps us manage our stress. And we all know stress is a huge driver of actually, unhelpful habits. We don't think about those things. We just look at it often for weight loss. And my call to people would be, can you re-examine your relationship with exercise, with movement, with physical activity, whatever you want to call it, so that it's less focused on weight loss and more focused on life gain.
Absolutely. And weight loss can sometimes be a happy byproduct, as can a bunch of other stuff. But I think it's about taking the outcome out of it. It's about saying, I've gone outside for half an hour and that's the end of that story.
Yeah. So it's kind of stepping away from, I suppose step counting is almost another form of calorie counting, isn't it? It's in a way like, maybe for some people, but it depends on what your relationship is with it. And you know, moving more is only going to benefit you in a huge amount of ways, you know, and psychologically. But let's not force ourselves to use exercise as a punishment in retribution for our sins and as a weight loss tool alone, because it's not an effective way to approach our healthy lifestyle change.
Beautifully put. I couldn't agree more.
Okay, shall we end on that?
Sure.